Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Red Brick Summit 2021, we welcome you all to the next session of the TRBS Speaker Series. In the second ever virtual TRBS, we are extremely honored to have Ms. Monika Shergill with us. Monika ma'am is the Vice President of Content at Netflix India. She oversees the development, creation, licensing, and acquisition of all Indian language content on Netflix and has been instrumental in entertaining audiences with diverse stories, including Masaba Mabasa, Jamtara, Haseen Dillruba, and many more. She has previously held several executive positions across global broadcast networks in India, including Viacom 18, where she helmed the content launch of this streaming service, and at Star India, where she led the programming strategy and content teams across several linear channels, and was also responsible for the groundbreaking series Satyamev Jayate. Monika ma'am's session will be moderated by Professor Vaibhavi Kulkarni. Vaibhavi ma'am is a faculty in the communications area at IIM Ahmedabad and is an instructor for several core courses across the PGP, EPGP, and the PGPX curriculum. So with that, I'll be handing over the reins of the session to you, Vaibhavi ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tanmay. Good evening, everyone. And on behalf of the students and the IIM community, thank you for joining us. And thank you, Monika. I know the students and the IIM community is extremely excited to have you with us. And honestly speaking, a lot of my research work and teaching involves looking at the role of narratives and the way these narratives, both fictional and non-fictional, construct our worldview. So at a personal level as well, I think I am looking forward to this conversation as much as they are. So yeah, great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Professor. It's such a wonderful honor to be here. And I really hope I'm able to, share some insights, have a fun conversation, and just, throw some light on whatever the questions are.
Thanks. This is very much a student-led initiative, and I have a long list of questions that these students want me to ask. So without much ado, I'm just going to jump right in. And let me start with a question that is probably in the minds of many of us who have been following Netflix shows. So we just want to know, from a creative risk-taking perspective, how difficult is it to balance pushing ahead with a sequel of an acclaimed series versus, a movie versus creating original content, completely original content versus acquiring regional content?
That's a very interesting question because, stories are a very emotional product, if I can use that word per se, because nothing is tried and tested about what you are going to, tell in a story, how you're going to mount it. There are so many uncertainties involved, and yet there is the vision and passion of a creator at the heart of every story. And then there is the belief of a creative exec, who really looks at that idea and feels the passion of the creator and decides that this is a story that I want to help bring to life. So it's always a very tough call, and bigger the projects, actually, the tougher the calls, because it gets more and more complex, right? The stakes are higher. But as they say, there's something at Netflix which we do very uniquely. And in my career of 2.5 decades, you always evaluate a lot, and you always, try to, in some way or the other, tick every box. But the one thing we do very differently at Netflix is that we are always out to innovate and experiment. Like, it's something which is ingrained in the Netflix DNA. Every single person across the company, whether they are part of the content team or they're part of any other function, we all operate like fans of stories, right? So that is at the heart of every choice that we make, which is why we are fearless when we take those decisions. And the only North Star for us is the audience. We are constantly thinking that how can we make more audience pleasing content? And what are the different things that we can do to please our audience, to really bring new stories to life? So when stories become very successful in their season 1, it's a very simple call. to renew them. Yeah, you can see how big series like Sacred Games have done, or Delhi Crime have done. Squid Game, as we speak right now, there's a rage going on. Squid Game is traveling like it's already become the biggest season 1 ever on Netflix of any title.
Right.
So when you have that kind of fandom which is driving people to watch, it's a simple decision. On the other extreme, when you have stories which a certain set of people have loved, but it's a very small loyal cohort, then also that does it really make sense to have a returning season or to reinvest in that story, because a very small group of people have really loved it to that extent. It's really the middle band where it becomes difficult, and we really look at all the stories, and we look at how much they were loved. You can like a show and then you can love a show. Shows and films, series and films that are loved, there can be film franchises, there can be series franchises. So it's really, you listen to your audience deeply, you see, we do consumer insights, but also we see how something is traveling within our own audience globally, and you get to know that when is the right time to renew something, and how much do people want to see it again. It's not about a creative exec, it's not about me, I could love different stories, but as Professor Vaibhavi, you have loved this and so many other people have loved it, so this story has to come back. It's only, as in life, it's only the 51-49 decisions which are very difficult, and those are few.
I can imagine. And also, I found it very interesting. You said we are all fans of stories at Netflix, right? And so one of the other thoughts that I've that we've had was, so for creative industries in particular, and especially OTT industry, are there any then specific socio-cultural practices that enable creativity, or that enable creative risk taking, at least initially? See, once the show is out, you know that, okay, this, like you said, people loved it, people liked it, people didn't like it, but initially when you're going for it, any particular socio-cultural practices in the organization, in the ecosystem, that sort of compel people to take these kind of calls?
Yeah, actually all the risk is front loaded. It's very, very very much based on your gut. There is no data that can support you to actually take a call to tell a story or not to tell a story. The only place where data can help you a little, where we also use it in very small measure, is actually how big to make something. And that too only in certain sort of stories or titles where you really have that call, how big can you go? Because you know that if somebody that you know that a large audience loves crime, right? And then you would say, okay, when you're telling a crime story, which is a big canvas crime story, can you go really big, and how big can you go? And what should be the scale of risk that you take on that? But really, it's the passion about the story and the vision that you see. So what uniquely we do at Netflix is, one of the most important things at Netflix is that there is no one person deciding everything. In my entire sort of journey till here, it's fundamentally determined, it's very hard coded, where there is a content strategy, you have a programming strategy, and there is a head of programming who really takes all the final calls. I've been in those positions earlier. And as the lead of content for India, it's a very different way that I'm playing the role at Netflix now, because Netflix is really about catering to a very wide taste of audience. We are designed to be a service which can be my service, which is different from your service, different from everyone's service who's probably sitting out there in your audience today, and then some.
Right.
One will have a version of their Netflix. So in my content team, and across the globe, all the content teams, whether it's in Spain, Korea, LATAM, Africa, India, US, everywhere, the one core thing is that the entire content team is a very diverse content team. Senior leaders in the content team are able to take their own calls on stories. In my team alone, my senior team, can feel the passion of a creator, so long as they know that this is the strategy that we have, these are the audiences, this is the size of audience that you're looking at, they're able to pick the passion projects and to really throw their might behind them. And as we say here, there are many paths to a yes. That's the second thing that we do here, where I always encourage senior people in my team, across my team, any level of experience, to really more and more people to read pitches that come in, because somebody could not find value in a story, whereas somebody else could really
see something. Yeah.
If you look at Squid Game, it was rejected for such a long period of time. The creator wrote the story in 2009 and nobody was buying it.
Right.
Stranger Things was rejected by between 10 plus networks, actually between 10 and 15 networks. I mean, the Duffer brothers did the rounds, and they couldn't really sell the story because it was a complex mix of science fiction, horror, with kids at the center of it. Like, who would think that this combination would work, right?
Yeah, the fit, like people couldn't see that fitting into any mold. Yes, I can.
Yeah. So, from that perspective, the strength at Netflix that we have, which we build, the muscle we build in the team here, is not to close the doors to great stories, but to really open more doors to great stories and have more people really look. If we are confused, we have more people read it. It takes us a long time to really say, okay, no, this is not working. So,
yeah. And I think from the sound of what you're saying, also empower people to be able to read and to be able to sort of take those calls and not.
That's absolutely at the core of Netflix. The whole structure is about empowerment, and that's how the teams function. That's how we are able to scale and tell so many stories.
Sounds very interesting. One of the reasons, I think, one of the reasons creativity has flourished so much in digital platforms, OTT platforms, Netflix, in particular, I think also is that, there are no boundaries now, right? There are no boundaries in terms of time, in terms of scale. Like you said, you could have, different, unlike like traditional TV or movies, literally there could be no boundaries, whether it's genre, whether it's time, whether it's scale, whether it's content, and there's a lot of experimentation that has been going on. Now, what are your views on this growing call to regulate OTT platforms? How do you see this going? Where do you see this going, and how do you see this influencing OTT?
Where regulation is concerned, actually, I want to go to something you said, which is very interesting in your earlier part of the question, that there are no boundaries. Mm-hmm. I think that has become such a big strength, the way access has opened up. Yeah. Streaming services came in 5 years ago when Netflix and Amazon and, Hotstar was here, and then Disney took over somewhere like, a couple of years ago, and all the other platforms. It's suddenly that the amount of exposure and access and ability to really travel across cultures. There are people who are consuming Korean, Spanish content, Japanese anime, and all that is really opening up people's minds to the kind of stories they want to see on the service, whether in India or from anywhere else in the world. Everyone's learning from everyone, and also, it's elevating the taste. So our jobs are actually becoming tougher and tougher to find newer and newer stories.
Standards are becoming high, yeah.
Constantly keep raising the bar. So Indian audiences love Indian stories. 80% of our audience watches a film a week, which is the highest across the world. We watch a lot of documentaries. We love watching Indian content, but we also consume content which is from across the world a lot. So when we talk about regulation, if you just see the diversity of storytelling which is happening even currently on the Indian streaming services, right. In the history of entertainment in India, you have never seen that kind of diversity. Whether you talk about linear TV, you talk about cinema in India, they are one to many mediums of storytelling. Which is where you're always working towards a business model where your story that you're telling has to, in any case, appeal to the largest set of people, the same title, right? Whereas on streaming services, you have the option of co-viewing, you have the option of one-to-one consumption. Most of us, want to watch what we want to watch, right? And there is some stuff which we watch together with our families or friends. But, when we are making those choices, all of that diversity is available to us. It is at the end of the day about being a little responsible about that diversity. I really believe that the answer lies between, respecting the consumer. Consumer choice is very, very important. Creative excellence is very important. And stories that are told responsibly are very important. So I think it's not one or the other. We've always had regulation in the country with cinema and TV and everything. And I think the same goes for streaming services, where and we as a service really believe in self-regulation. We have age rating, we have synopsis, we have parental controls. So we believe in a lot of self-regulation. And if we are responsible and we don't shy away from telling stories that need to be told, I think we can do anything.
Yeah, I can believe that, looking at the trajectory that Netflix India has had. I really like the fact that you talked about access, right? And it's true. It's just become so accessible, and it's interesting that. And was that the thought behind introducing Netflix mobile services in some of the geographies? The idea of access, and do you think that has also changed people's? Does that change the consumption patterns? Do you see any change in consumption patterns because of the introduction of the mobile platform? Mobile only, it's 199.
Yeah. In India, as we keep sharing within the Netflix teams globally also, India is a different market. Because we have, a very 80-20 ratio, fundamentally, not about Netflix, but fundamentally, we consume a lot of entertainment on our mobile services. And we actually, most of us have a lot of apps, and whether we order food or whatever we do, we are really hooked on, and WhatsApp keeps us going all the time, and all other platforms, actually chat platforms. So in that sense, the mobile introduction of the mobile plan was a very big move. We are a 10-foot service, honestly, a fixed Wi-Fi network, 10-foot service, because the kind of content we make and the quality that we make it at, the investment that we put, we really want people to enjoy it on large screens, But India is a country where we are a mobile first country, and there is no running away from that. And actually, you have to really go where your consumer is, right? Where your audience is. So it's important that if in India, and the other unique thing about India is, which doesn't exist in many other countries, and I would say developed countries, a lot of Southeast Asian countries are actually really like, in terms of consumption patterns and behaviors, there is some overlap with India, which is why we tested in India. We started this plan in India, and we have taken it to other Southeast Asian countries, and it's doing very well, the mobile plan. So a part of that is also because we want, we are single TV homes.
Yeah.
And that's a social behavior. You would not want to, the remote is in the hand of probably an elder person at certain point in time,
or children,
family or children,
yeah.
Or somebody wants to watch news, or somebody wants to watch cricket. And it's really important, the stories that we have, everyone can have their own Netflix. And that's why a lot of people, because of single TV homes, because of actually wanting to watch what they want to watch and not be determined by other people's choices, mobile is, our go-to entertainment sort of.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. In fact, OTT has made viewing so personal. Something that used to be a communal experience has now just become such a personal experience. You want to have your own profile. You want to be able to do that.
And personalized,
And absolutely personalized, with personalized recommendations.
Personalized, your own. If you like something, you'll keep getting more and more amazing recommendations on your service, and particularly the Netflix recommendation engine really helps to bring you, because we are an ocean of content, Professor. It's like there is so much that even I, like, a lot of times when people talk to me about some titles they have seen, and I'm also clueless, because there are just so many titles and there's only, so much that you personally catch up with.
Yeah. Do you ever envisage a freemium model of Netflix coming up? Do you foresee any time at all?
We are very quality conscious, and we put a lot of effort in giving an ad-free experience to our members, and that is the value that we bring to them, to have these immersive worlds, this immersive storytelling, where you can sort of really enjoy a story seamlessly. So currently there are no plans as such, but we keep testing and learning. We are not a brand or a company that's, says never or no to anything. As you know, we've started with our gaming initiative also. So, we are constantly experimenting and learning and finding how to please our members better. That's at the heart of everything that we want to do.
Nice. At a more personal level, I was reading about your career graph, and you've been associated with stories from get-go, right? I used to be a journalist as well, and I think even when I think of journalism, I think of it in terms of telling a story, a narrative, a story that needs to be told, but it's still a story. It's still a narrative that it's still a point of view. Which includes facts, but it's still very much that. And then, of course, your documentary, and then television, and then digital platforms. What draws you to storytelling at a personal level?
Actually, it's a very, very weird story. When I was growing up, I was really fascinated with, I don't know if you'll remember, there used to be a show called The World This Week.
Oh, yes, of course.
And I used to love it. I really used to love it, and watching it on the black and white TV. And I used to dash from my room, the minute I used to hear the theme song playing. And I would really be fascinated with all the journalists reporting from different parts of the world and covering stories from there. So I think it was very early on that I sort of got very fascinated, and I wanted to travel and tell stories. And I think that's what took me to journalism. And I did environment journalism and documentary filmmaking for about 5-6 years in the initial part of my career. And when I was traveling across the country, whether it was really covering the cotton farmer suicides, reporting from coal mines, or doing stories on endangered species, the people that you meet, and you realize that there is so much more to them than just that subject that you're covering. They are really, you cannot see them at a two-dimensional level, and everyone's got a life and relationships and journey and
the danger of a single story, so as to speak, right? Like you
correct.
Yes,
very well said. So it's the dreams and desires, and so I think at that point in time, somewhere, like, I love journalism. I am a news buff and I keep sort of following up, but I really felt that I want to tell stories in a more sort of long-standing way, something that lives beyond that moment when my stories shouldn't be perishable. So that was important. And also somewhere, I feel that the manner in which we are able to capture people's lives in fiction storytelling, like we say at Netflix, that we want to reflect as many lives on screen as possible, because more people want to see, they want to have a voice. Storytelling is a way to have a voice, when you could be a voiceless person, but if you identify with somebody, that's your story. So
absolutely.
So that's how I kind of made the switch. So I went into, linear network, scripted storytelling. I did unscripted version, all kinds of formats. And then I came back to what I started out with, which was a show very close to my heart, which was Satyamev Jayate, which I was a project lead of. So it was a beautiful sort of coming together of what inspired me to come into the field. and then, how one could take that narrative form ahead.
It's a great journey. Does it ever get, because I mean, you're also in the business of storytelling, right? I mean, there is this part which is, of course, you love stories, and then there is the business of storytelling. And so I think commercial success and failure is, at least I think, fairly, for the outsiders, is fairly easy to define, I think. How easy is it to understand creative failures or successes? In the sense of when you're pushing the boundaries, because you're constantly pushing the boundaries at Netflix, and how do you differentiate? Okay, this was a creative failure, and then you don't want to. How does that work?
Yeah. I think it's a reality that when you're in these roles and you're taking these high stakes decisions, and you're really backing stories that could work for an audience, that could not at all work for an audience, and it's heartbreaking because the journey of storytelling is so long. Any creative exec or creator actually who wants to tell a story has lived with that story for such a long time, and there's so much hard work, effort, so many people across the teams that work on it. So it is very tough. These are not easy calls. Excitement is very important, passion is very important, but also being strategic is very important, because at the end of the day you're running a business. And particularly for me, because my role is a hybrid role where I've been a creative and commissioning exec in my life, but I've worked very deeply in storytelling. That's how you green light stories, and then you see them through the journey of making. But you will have failures, you have to. So you cannot, your going in position has to be a very sort of confident, mature. You have to go in with eyes wide open into something, but you have to be a little mad also when you're making content. You have to be passionate, you have to believe in things. You have to believe in ideas. You can't, it can't be a it's not a mathematical equation. So over the years, you understand what people want to watch. You study, when something there's something that we do a lot here, which is wells not wells. Something that has worked, you do wells not wells, and what could we have done better? And something that has not worked, we do more wells not wells. You want to understand that what could we have done differently, or why did this story not resonate? Were we short of creative excellence on this story? The concept was good, the idea was great, but did we not tell it excellently, or did something else go wrong? So those are the things that you see, that you try to understand. And personally for me, I've always tried to separate a creative failure, a title or a story led project led failure from a strategy failure.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting take on it.
Those are two very different things. That this title didn't work. Why did it not work? It's because we chose the wrong title, or the strategy was wrong. Should we have made it smaller? Did we spend too much money on it?
Yeah.
It wasn't meant for a bigger audience and we thought it was. Or so, there are a lot of these things that you look at, which are very important. And actually it is, in many ways, it is similar to how you would work in other industries also. Because except that this is, like I said earlier, this is an emotional zone. You're creating an emotional product for people. It is a story at the end of the day, and it has to resonate with people. And timing is also very important. The environment in which a story is coming could really lift it or could, kill it. Sometimes that also happens. People sometimes are ready. Like, you can tap into the zeitgeist because people are ready for that story. Sometimes some stories before their time.
Before their time. That is so true.
Yeah.
So do you have then any stories that are particularly on a lighter note close to you, that regardless of whether they worked or not, but just stories that were precious for you?
My actually on Netflix, my really a story close to my heart because of my own journey also is Delhi Crime. The way it's told, the power of that story is exceptional. It won the International Emmy also because of the way it was told. And that's not an easy story as a creative person to invest in. It's a very tough call because you know how raw that subject is, how emotional it could hurt people. It's very sensitive, but it's how you do it that. That's a story that's very close to my heart. Then there are many stories which are coming on our slate, which I'm very excited about. But even globally, if I were to say, I mean, for me, I mean, Bridgerton is something that I've really enjoyed because it's a world which breaks all the rules of a period drama. Like it's not just a romantic story. It breaks, I mean, you have never, ever seen a period drama which is told in, in a manner where you can't believe that how you are breaking the rules of race.
It was a bold, very bold.
Totally, that is such a huge risk to take. Both from the creator and Netflix to really come together, the creative execs who worked on it, and that's. I mean, I really admire that kind of decision making where you are going to challenge the norm completely. And still you come out like it was number one in 83 countries. It came out with flying colors. The second season is due, and everyone's looking forward to it. So I think those are the kind of stories which really appeal to a very large audience and yet have something where there's a very unique voice. So you've challenged some rules and you've learned something. Those are the stories that really excite me.
Nice. That's lovely too. And two very different.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You've chosen like two completely different kinds of shows. Of course, I think what the common thread probably also is the treatment, right? I mean, treatment for both Delhi Crime and for
and the clarity of the creator, like Richie Mehta on Delhi Crime, like his vision was absolutely unique. His rigor, how he put everything together. Same for Shonda and her team. They were so clear that this is how they are imagining the story, and there would be so many discussions across the shows, in the journey of storytelling. There are so many points where you're so confused, because you have to take those big calls, and they could go south and they could go north, who knows, because there is no formula. But the important thing is that how do you stay true to the DNA of the idea? How do you go fearlessly, but you're also taking calculated risks and you're keeping the audience at the heart of everything? I mean, for me, any decision I'm taking, like, the audience trumps everything. So that's my constant filter. How do you do that? And many a times you have to steer your creators, because you are, understanding how the audience, what are they watching, are they loving, to what extent. So sometimes you have to steer.
They may, like, sometimes you have these creative juices flowing and they may go in a particular direction.
It happens a lot of the times.
That must be a difficult conversation too. I'm thinking I think it's probably more difficult because if you understand stories and you love stories yourself, and then to have that conversation, because probably you can relate to them more than you would think, right? As opposed to an executive who's not at all, who's just purely a business head and who's looking at it from a business perspective. So
they're very tough conversations. They're not easy for the creators. They're not easy for us, and no one knows who's right, right? Because when you're making something, when you're creating something, what is that point at which creative freedom should be sort of matched with creative accountability? Because as a service, you really take tremendous risks. You back ideas, and then you have your marketing, you mount them so well and all of that. And So they are sensitive conversations, but I think creators also know and have it basically at their, every creator wants their story to be the biggest, right? So I think that is where the job of a, like Ted says it very beautifully, actually I should share both these things. Like Reed says it, where Netflix is concerned, that we don't supervise, we inspire. So that's the approach that we have, that where you partner with your creators in such a way that you work with them and you inspire them and you guide them on the things that they wouldn't know from a service point of view. And like Ted keeps saying, that the job of creators is to make great things, and the job of creative execs is to make things great. So that is the job that you do every single day of your life, where you're really making sure that you make your story stand out, you support your creators in such a way that you're able to really please the audience in the best possible way. At the end of the day, it's member joy for us at Netflix.
Very well put. Last question before we leave you. From what you're saying, I think I see that it's the audience, it's the story and the audience combination that seems to be the heart of all decision making at Netflix. Just one
and finding the best storytellers, the original voices.
Of course, yeah.
So it's really a beautiful combination, because you do it for the audience, but how we as a service, find the best storytellers and the stories to please the audience.
Okay, all right. I'm with you there. Just so that being said, over a period of time, the trends have shifted. So after the advent of OTT, Netflix, regional content, more stories from Heartland, so on and so forth. I mean, there has been a shift in consumption patterns, and there also has been a shift in the sort of stories that Netflix says, more experimental stories, and so on and so forth. Now and of course, pandemic changed everything. Pandemic sort of broadened everybody's tastes. Language is no longer a barrier. Location, physical location, culture, nothing seems to be a barrier now. Do you see in the post-pandemic era, do you see any specific trends going forward for the OTT platforms or for digital content? And would you also ever consider a short story format for Netflix, the way some of your competitors have got into?
I think in terms of trends, things are rapidly changing in the last 5 years. I mean, we've not seen this in decades. We've not seen this change in entertainment landscape and tastes of people. So I think in the last 5 years, it's changing rapidly. And the last year and a half, like you rightly said, it's been a very sort of cascading effect. People have suddenly wanted to travel through stories. Everyone is, I mean, the way Money Heist, if I can share with you, was the previous season, not even this season, which has like become an absolute rage, in India. Till last year, all the seasons of Money Heist, as a title, it was on the top 10 of Netflix India for more than 170 days in a year, consistently. So, and 1/3 of its viewing happens in Hindi, Tamil, and Telugu. So content is traveling, and people are watching it in a language of their choice. So experimentation will increase, expectations will increase. When
what you just said, yes.
When you see global creators thinking differently, I think that's a challenge which Indian creative community has to really take. Because now with so much access to global storytelling, Indian creative community creators also have to really start sort of telling different kinds of stories, look at different ideas, and and the audience is getting ready for it. And this audience particularly, which is finding stories on streaming, is getting ready for it. Where the short format is concerned, we do have our own version of a short format. We've done many successful anthologies, whether last stories, ghost stories. We did Satyajit Ray's stories very recently called Ray. And then there's Ankahi Kahaniyan. Ajib Dastans was also another. So we do a lot of,
half an hour
anthology formats. However, just dropping a short film onto the service is going to kind of get lost on the service, because there is just so much content out there and so many big titles where with immersive storytelling that it's not that we won't do short films. They could be, I mean, they come sometimes, they've come also on the service. So there are no hard and fast rules. One thing about Netflix is, where content is concerned, we don't put any rules down.
Yeah.
It's really important for us to feel the merit of the content. It's just that opening ourselves to a large set of short stories doesn't make sense, because there are different platforms for that, where the stories can travel in a better manner. The stories will not be optimized by reaching
Yeah,
the
you actually may not, you're saying it, you're not even then doing justice to the stories themselves.
Exactly.
Because Netflix may not necessarily be the...
Yeah, and every story should find its right audience. And we do short formats on our social platforms also. So during the lockdown, we had done some lockdown stories on our social platforms. So those are also, a lot of our audiences. We have about 15 million audiences on our YouTube channel. So who are so highly engaged with everything that they watch.
Right.
We just did our global fan event to Doom. I don't know if you know about
Yes,
that.
I just saw it this morning. Yeah, I did.
Yeah, so Tudum actually brought the fan communities together. Globally, it has, been watched so much. So, there are other ways of putting short format content out also. And fundamentally, short format content will always be a part of larger packaged formats.
Thank you. That makes sense. Thank you so much, Monika, for first of all, leading, this being an industry leader, exposing audiences to just multiple perspectives, right? I mean, for so long, we've just been used to the typical protagonist, certain, just now just blurring the grays, and it's no more just black and white, and blurring the lines and pushing boundaries, and especially I think more for women. I mean, when I speak to a lot of women around me, just so delighted to have the sort of protagonists that Netflix has. It's amazing. It's amazing
it's so liberating for all
Yes.
of us also as creators, that we can watch what we create, we can push the envelope, we can really be authentic and tell the stories and reflect the characters as they are, and not have to really
or a glorified version of somebody, or cut out, like this is how you're supposed to behave, this is how the story is supposed to go, so on and so forth. So yes, thank you so much for giving us those stories, for spearheading the content creation, and most importantly, thank you for joining us at the Red Brick Summit. I think on behalf of all the students, they were so excited to have
Thank you, Professor. Thank you for calling me here. I think I owe you guys a bigger thanks. It's an honor to be here, and lovely to have this chat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
So, thank you, everyone, ma'am, for agreeing to moderate the session. And on behalf of the entire TRBS team, I would like to extend a huge thanks to Monika, ma'am, for taking out time from a busy schedule to enlighten us with her experiences and knowledge. And as students who aspire to be business leaders, I'm sure the learnings from this session would be very helpful for us as we go about tackling uncertainties and decisions of our own in our lives.
Thanks, Tanmay. You guys are doing a great job. So keep up that work.
Yeah, at the same time, we would also like to take this opportunity to thank our title sponsor, State Bank of India. TRBS 2021 is powered by GRT Jewelers. And we would also like to thank Perfetti Van Mel, our business partner, and either